One day, I was cleaning him. Because at this time, he was only lying in bed. So he had to be really cleaned in every way. Changed fully, all his clothes. This became, by this point, this was required now. And I was turning him. We would change the sheets. As you do, you roll the patient on one side and roll up the sheets under him, and then you roll him back across it and pull the sheet out, and then you do the reverse to replace the sheet. So I was in the middle of this operation, moving the sheet out from under him. And on my hand, his head was resting on my arm was under his neck. And he was looking at my face, although I didn't realize it because I was busy cleaning him and changing him around. And he said to me, "It is a nasty business." No, sorry. He said, "It is nasty." Questioning. And I looked at his face, and I realized he was talking about me cleaning him. And I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, it's not nasty." He said, "You don't mind?" I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, I don't mind." I said, "If you don't let me serve you, then I will serve Maya." He thought for a moment. He said, "That is true." So we kind of knew, and the attitude was that if we ever let him feel undignified or that he was a burden to us in any way, he would just give up the ghost. He had no ability to tolerate any kind of dependency or indignity. He was a very noble, dignified man. At every moment, this was an example of that.
So we came around to the head of Prabhupada's bed, and we went to Prabhupada's feet, and we offered our obeisances, and then we stood up and we saw Prabhupada laying there. And it was shocking to see Prabhupada in that condition. And immediately Govardhan lost it, and he had a chadar, and he covered his mouth, and he was sobbing quietly. And Prabhupada said, he smiled, and said, "Oh, who is this? Who has come?" We were standing right at Prabhupada's foot of Prabhupada's bed. And Tamal said, "It's Govardhan and Udayananda from Detroit, Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, how are you? Is your accommodations okay? Did you get prasadam? Are you comfortable? Is everything okay? Is this nice? Is Krishna Balaram guest house okay for you? And I said, "Yes, Srila." Govardhan couldn't talk. He was weeping. And I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, it's first class. Thank you so much for taking such good care of us." And he said, "And are the devotees in Detroit, are they happy? Are they taking prasadam? And are they happy in Krishna consciousness? And how is Lake Shavanti and Ambarish?" Prabhupada asked about Ambarish. And are they happy in chanting Hare Krishna? And are they happy in Krishna consciousness? And how is the temple and deity worship? And the neighborhood? Are you preaching in the neighborhood? And Prabhupada just went on, and he was just talking about everyone else's well-being. He just was like, he was in this condition that it was explained to me that the Kaviraj who was treating Srila Prabhupada had treated thousands of people with the same condition. And he said, and it's so painful that the people literally writhe in pain. It's so painful, they can barely tolerate the pain. They become incoherent. They become beside themselves, delirious. And Prabhupada was not only so crystal clear in his consciousness, but he was just concerned about the well-being of others. Never once did he say, oh, look at my condition, look at how I'm suffering, look at this. This is all due to this, that, and the other. Never once. It was just, how are you? And I was trying to, wrap my mind around, how could a person be like this in this condition? So selfish.
This is Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada departed from Vrindavan on November 14th, 1977. This was approximately November 8th or November 10th. So I came to Vrindavan. I was in the Hyderabad farm, which was very important to Srila Prabhupada, so I was staying there. But I heard that Srila Prabhupada was not feeling well and that it was a chance he might leave the world, so I went to see him. And came there, and I tried to be as inconspicuous as possible, not to disrupt the mood. The room was packed with devotees. Everyone was very quiet, and I could see Prabhupada's condition. I was told about it. He really hadn't eaten for almost 6 months. It's a very important thing to understand Prabhupada's condition. He was lying in bed, emaciated, weighing maybe 70 pounds, if that much, drinking 1 spoon, 2 spoons of water, maybe eating a little bit. And as I was sitting there in the back, just listening to what was going on, and there was some kirtan. Kirtananda had come in and was offering Srila Prabhupada some strawberries, probably from New Vrindavan. So Srila Prabhupada asked, when Kirtananda offered him the strawberries, he says, what is the value of strawberries? And everyone was silent. And no one knew what to say. So then several devotees kept on poking me. I'm kind of known as the walking encyclopedia. I like to study things. So they kept on poking me to say something. So I didn't want to intrude on Prabhupada. I was remaining quiet. But I spoke. I said, Srila Prabhupada, the value of strawberries is that they're very high in fructose, and that provides immediate energy. Because I knew Prabhupada wasn't so much into vitamins. So I talked about the value. Prabhupada's very pragmatic, even lying on his departure bed, not eating. He's concerned what will be the value of eating it. Pragmatic person. So the devotee next to him says, Tejas says that it, and he repeated it. And Prabhupada said, oh, Tejas is here. And Prabhupada said, how is the Hyderabad farm? So he's so cognizant, always. I mean, even this state. And so I gave him a report that we're growing corn, rice, mung beans, like that. And as soon as I said corn, Prabhupada said, oh. He says, corn. You can grind the corn, and then there are big pieces, which you can boil with water, cook with water, like rice, which is called bhat. And the other, the fine powder, you make that together like a roti, and you cook that on the pan, the cooking pan. And he says, and the villagers, they very much like this. So here he was, from a physical point of view, starving. And what was he thinking? He was just thinking how we could make this corn in the most delicious way to make the villagers happy when they take prasadam. This is a person of unlimited compassion.
Prabhupada's position, after you were with Prabhupada for a while, you got used to Prabhupada's physical condition that was so devastating when you first saw. So we would be around Prabhupada's bed, and then new devotees would come in, and as they first saw Srila Prabhupada, they'd start crying, and it would be so pathetic that we'd all start crying. The Swedish devotees crying when they first saw Srila Prabhupada. So we'd all started crying. And then Prabhupada said, at one point he says, why are you all crying? So he said, Srila Prabhupada, we're crying because you're so sick and we are afraid that you may leave. And Prabhupada said, I will never leave you. He said, I live forever in my books. I will never leave you. I'll live forever within my books, so there's no reason to cry. He said, old people cry, old people die, that is natural. He said, when a young person dies, that's some mistake, because young person should live to their old. When they're old, they should die. And that's, for me, it's natural. It's a natural thing, so don't cry. So then one devotee said, but Srila Prabhupada, we're crying because we can't be without you. And when you leave, we won't know how to communicate with you. And Prabhupada says, oh, I will communicate with you through your heart. He said, I will come to you in your dreams as Chaitya Guru. I will communicate with you through dreams, Prabhupada said, as Chaitya Guru. I also found that a little controversial because I thought my godbrothers wouldn't have approved, but Prabhupada had said it. Prabhupada said it right there, that he would communicate with us through dreams.
This was told to me by one brahmachari who, when Srila Prabhupada was leaving, he came with his guru, and he had seen Srila Prabhupada a few times when he was a young boy in Bengal, and Prabhupada had asked him if he would help him by helping to train up his young boys, his young disciples. But he was pretty young himself at that time, didn't speak English, and he was terrified of the Western devotees because people had said that we were CIA and we would kidnap them and make them marry an American girl or something. So he was frightened, but he said that he always remembered that instruction. And then he said that when Srila Prabhupada was leaving, he was sitting in the room, and Srila Prabhupada was just lying on his bed. He wasn't saying anything. And he said he was sitting there and he was praying to Srila Prabhupada. Oh, Srila Prabhupada, I know that you're fulfilling the order of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and I want to help. And I've never been able to do it, and I'm so sorry. And he was lamenting like that in his heart. But he said he also had some really deep questions about the holy name. And I think this is a brahmachari who had been chanting 64 rounds for about 15 years. I don't know what questions he could have had, but he had some, and they were in his heart. And he was sitting there, and he said that all of a sudden the servant and whoever else was there went out of the room, and he was just alone with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada was lying on the bed. And he kind of looked at him, and he saw that Srila Prabhupada had one eye open. And with that eye, he went like this. So he kind of was so nervous, but he scooted over, and Prabhupada kept going like this, come closer. And finally, he got right next to Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada put his mouth right by his ear. And he said in the most amazing way, Srila Prabhupada chanted the Maha Mantra into his ear. And he said that when the Maha Mantra went into his ear, just like a waterfall flowing into his heart, every answer to every question and 1,000 more came into his heart. He had never experienced anything like that meaning of the holy name that Prabhupada was giving him. And then he said he looked at Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada just looked at him with the one eye, and then he just closed his eye.
I remember him lying in bed at the manor. And we used to get some nice letters of get well and good wishes for Srila Prabhupada. And of course we would read these to him. So I was reading one letter from our godbrother Siddhaswarup. Now at that time, historically, Siddhaswarup had been a bit of a iconoclast in ISKCON. He was apart from the most of his godbrothers. He had his own unique style and perspective on things. And in that exact time, he had really left again. He had come in and then left again and gone back to his own establishment in Hawaii. But of course, he was a devotee of Prabhupada still. So he had written a get well card to Prabhupada, and I was reading it. Prabhupada was lying down, I was standing up, and the get well card said, Dear Srila Prabhupada, he said a variety of things. I'm praying for your health and this and that. But he came to one particular line where he said, I am a resident of Hawaii, and I hope that if you think of Hawaii sometime, you may also think of me. And I suddenly heard Prabhupada choke up, and he burst out. I was looking at the card, and I looked up at Prabhupada's face, and in that span of time, the tears had already come down, halfway down his cheeks. So I don't know if they sprayed out or what, or if they were already dripping, but they were clearly down at the level of his nose, the bottom of his nose. And he choked up and he said, "I am always thinking of you. I can never forget." And this was indicative of the way he was at that time. Any nice thought could bring him to tears and to deep appreciation.
Then another time, Srila Prabhupada, at one time when lots of devotees were there, especially the people that Prabhupada called Ridvik Acharyas, transparent to the previous Acharya. I never heard Prabhupada refer to the 11 that he was going to ask to initiate as gurus, but Prabhupada called them Ridvik Acharyas, transparent to the previous Acharya. You know, that's Srila Prabhupada said. Now, these devotees who say this or that thing, one's like a right and left now. There's a right group, there's a right wing devotees and there's left wing devotees. But Srila Prabhupada called it Ridvik Acharya, transparent to the previous Acharya. And he said, he would often say, he would talk about this to the devotees, to Goswami Maharaj, to Bhavananda, to Sasarup. He would, very long time about what he wanted them to do, how to initiate, how to carry on. And it was everyone's understanding that those disciples would be their disciples. And I was very surprised to see in that letter, that July 9th or 7th letter, that Prabhupada was going to be, they were going to enter Prabhupada's book, you know, of disciples. Because Prabhupada was, it seemed while I was in the room that the new people were going to be the Marga brothers' disciples, and Srila Prabhupada would be grandfather guru. He even said that word. He would be grandfather guru. And, you know, there was recordings going on all the time. As soon as Prabhupada spoke, they would turn the recording off, the recorder on, and then they'd turn it off. It's not that Prabhupada spoke like he did in good health. Prabhupada was mostly just sitting there quietly, almost sleeping, it would appear, resting. But as soon as Prabhupada would speak, the recorder was right by his head, and they just hit the on switch. So that's why when you hear those tapes, it's clicking on and off.
In the final days, which was the most, poignant, we were there in Vrindavan and having like the vigil, the kirtan, and taking turns chanting softly with the little cymbals. And at a certain point, I got sick. I got this fever. I don't know what it was. I just one day just walked back to my room and just collapsed right in my room, and just fever. And so I was sick for a few days, and anyway, it took me about a week or so to recover, and then I was able to, when I got better, then I was able to again go and see Prabhupada. So when I came there, of course Prabhupada was just lying on his bed, and he was conversing with his servants, and sometimes he would ask who was having the kirtan. And so that particular day he asked, and they said, they mentioned my name, and then Prabhupada said, "Oh, Brahmananda," and then he made me go, and then I came forward, and so he said, "You were ill. You were not feeling well." I mean, here's Prabhupada, you know, just completely shriveled, and I mean, Prabhupada was not maybe feeling. I mean, when Prabhupada was concerned, I'm not feeling well. I had just a little fever, and here's Prabhupada on his departure bed, and he said, "Oh, you were not." I mean, he with such concern, and really with love, and I just was totally, you know. Affected by that, how Prabhupada could be thinking that I wasn't feeling well. So I think this is the thing that affected me most, how much Prabhupada loved us. But the thing is, we're not very lovable, and we all have defects and so on. But why did Prabhupada love us? And he loved us because he saw us as servants of Krishna. And he also even said that we were sent by his Guru Maharaj to help in his mission. But anyway, Prabhupada saw us as Krishna's servants, and his mission was to spread Krishna consciousness. So whatever we could do to assist and do something in this cause of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada very much appreciated, and I think that's the essence of Srila Prabhupada. At least he could see us as servants of Krishna. So let us just try and be that. That's all.
In one conversation, it happened downstairs in his house in Vrindavan. He was talking about his impending death. And he said, "I have no lamentation," in the context of his impending demise, so to speak. "I have no lamentation." These are words he would use: death, demise. I'm just paraphrasing him. And naturally, he had no lamentation. Sojati, nakanchati. But then he paused after saying, "I have no lamentation about my impending death." He said, "No, I have a lamentation." And one of us asked, not me, but one of us in the group, 3, 4 people were there, "You mean because you have not finished Srimad Bhagavatam?" Srila Prabhupada said, "No, that I have not established Varnashram." He said, 50% of my work is incomplete because I have not established Varnashram. Now these 2 statements I heard in my own ears in Vrindavan. Then this thought kept coming up, what to do about this 50% of his incompleted work. It was in his mind. So he said on the roof on another conversation that, "I want to establish Varnashram." And I believe I asked him, "How will you do that?" It may have been Tamal Krishna, it may have been someone else, but it represented what we were all thinking. So I had the impression that I asked him. That may not be hagiographically perfect, but I was certainly in that questioning mood as well. "How will you do it?" we asked him. And he said, "I will go to Gita Nagari, I will sit down, and I will teach you how to live off the land. As simple as that.
So Prabhupada wanted to go to Govardhan. So he said, I want to go to Govardhan, and everyone's saying, Srila Prabhupada, we don't think this is a good idea, you know. And Prabhupada said, in this room, it's like being killed by Ravana. He said, Marichi, he said, he was given the choice to be, if he didn't become a deer and go and tempt Ram away from Sita, Ravana would kill him. And if he became a deer, Ram would kill him. So he told Ravana, better to be killed by Ram. So better to be killed by Ram, better to go to Govardhan. If I stay in this room, it's like being killed by Ravana. So, but Prabhupada, you can't go. You know, the doctor said, Prabhupada, you won't even make it to the gate. If we carry you, you won't even make to the gate. So there was a big discussion right around Prabhupada's bed, and Prabhupada said, you have to do this outside. I cannot, you know, it's too exhausting to hear this going on. It went on for maybe 15 minutes discussion right in front of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, go outside. So they went into Prabhupada's garden, and they had a big discussion. I was just talking to Bard Thresh about this. Went on and on and on. It seemed, I only remember one person on Prabhupada's side and everybody against Prabhupada, and I was on the side against. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj seemed to be the one who was on the side not to take Prabhupada to Govardhan, and Hamsaduta was the only one, and Lokanath, who went to get the cart, were on Prabhupada's side to take him to Govardhan. So this went on and on and on until the cart came to the Krishna Balaram gate. Then we hear, the cart's here. Now it's time to move Prabhupada from the bed to the cart. And it's night. It's getting dusk. I mean, not only are we going to put Prabhupada on the cart, which is probably going to kill him, but it's going to be at night. So it'd even be worse, you know. So Prabhupada wanted to go. No one would see. It would be at night. He would go and he would leave his body somewhere, and, you know, this is what we feared. So we all went in, and myself included, we all went around Srila Prabhupada's bed, and we said, Srila Prabhupada, please don't make us put you on this cart. Please don't make us put you on this cart. And Prabhupada said, he didn't say anything. And then we begged him, and we were almost crying. We were crying. And then Prabhupada said, if it worries you so much, I don't need to go. And it's just like the whole anxiety level just went from a 50,000 to back to zero, you know. And then everyone just, it was just like, oh, now we can relax. And then people started moving out of Prabhupada's room, you know. And it seemed like most of the people were out of the room. There weren't many people in the room. But I was still there, and I don't think there were many other people in the room. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I'll tell you this. I worked with him after Srila Prabhupada left for 7 years. You know, Siddhanta, how much I worked with him, how close I was with him. And why I worked with him was because I was so impressed at the excellent service that he gave Srila Prabhupada. You know, if you had everyone, even people who didn't like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, they saw how he served Prabhupada, and we were impressed that no one could have served him like this. You know, so, but because Goswami Maharaj was also very intimate to Prabhupada, he got very fried at this situation. And he went up to Prabhupada and he said, you know, Prabhupada, we can't understand why you do this. Why you insist for us to take you to Govardhan. We get so upset, we so worked up, and we just get this cart, and we bring it over here, and then we're so worried, we put you on the cart, you're going to die, we get flipped out, and we become more protective of you, even more than before, and I just can't take it, Prabhupada. Why do you do this? And he almost screamed at Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada said, it's my duty. Goswami said, what? He said, it's my duty to make you love me more. And Goswami said, oh. He walked away. And I just remember Prabhupada saying that, to make you love me more. And whatever love I had for Prabhupada just multiplied like 1,000 times. You know, he probably just made you love him so much. If you were with Prabhupada, whatever love you had for Prabhupada, he just increased it, and you just become more and more loving with him. His duty, he said, was to make us love him more. What wonderful duty. We already love Prabhupada, but he's getting us to love him more.
In Prabhupada's last days, we used to go in shifts, 24-hour kirtan was going on in his room, and we used to go in shifts. And I used to go in sometimes with a group of Gurukul students, and we would chant. I don't remember what our shift was. It was an hour or 2 hours. But we would chant using these very tiny kartals, making as little noise as possible because Prabhupada couldn't take too much sound, and they kept the lights quite low. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj, as I remember, asked me to chant, to lead the chanting. So I began to chant, and I was thinking, I'd really like to please Prabhupada with this chanting. And so I tried to remember every tune that I'd ever heard him chant Hare Krishna mantra with. I didn't know that many, but I tried to make sure they were tunes that he chanted. So I was really concentrating, and I was chanting these different tunes. And then our shift was over, and we got up and went out. Well, the next day when we went to chant, Tamal Krishna Maharaj grabbed me by the arm and said, you have to chant for Prabhupada. And I said, why? You know, I mean, sure, but he said, the other day when you were chanting, he said Prabhupada had called him over after we left and said, who was that chanting? And Tamal, always like the guardian, said, was there anything wrong, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada said, no. He said, it was nice. It was very nice, he said. So that was one. And then on another occasion, Ayodhyapati, who is now B.B. Govinda Maharaj, I don't know his sannyas name, anyway, his name at that time was Ayodhyapati, and I were in Prabhupada's room, and they asked us if we would like to help with massage Prabhupada. And so people were massaging somebody was massaging the head, some people were massaging the arms, legs, and Ayodhyapati and I each had one foot. And so we were massaging Prabhupada's feet. And I was feeling like I've always wanted to get the dust from Prabhupada's feet. And I never had the opportunity, and we were always worried about doing it anyway because, you know, it was a little bit discouraged. And so we each had one foot. And I turned to Ayodhyapati, and I only know this because he told me. I hadn't remembered this till he told me. I turned to him and I said, this is Vaikuntha. I said, and it was like, we just felt like we were in the spiritual world, you know, with Prabhupada just massaging his feet and, you know, just doing that as a service. It was real nice. And of course, I was also there when Prabhupada disappeared, left this world. And I'm sure you've probably heard plenty of stories from the devotees that were there. My own feeling at the time, it was just such a feeling of helplessness and desperation because, in fact, it was like that a lot during the last couple of months because it just felt like it was inevitable, but you couldn't stand the thought that he wasn't going to be with us. And on that last day, everyone was chanting. At first there was a kind of a back and forth, and then everybody began chanting together in the last moments. And again, it's not something you can empirically establish, but it felt like there were many more people in that room than were actually there. It felt like there was a heavenly chorus. It felt like there must be so many other personalities from other places who were present. And there was this tremendous feeling. I'm not trying to make light of it. It was like a Technicolor finish. You know, like when you have this spectacular ending to a movie or something. It was like this glorious chanting was going on, and Prabhupada was, with his last breath, was Hare Krishna, you know, uttering the syllables Hare Krishna, and you could almost feel the ascent You know, it was like you sensed, okay, he's ascending now. He's with Krishna. And the emotions were so intense in the room, and some devotees became completely hysterical, crying. One devotee threw himself on the floor and just weeping. He couldn't control himself. Other people were completely stricken or stoic, or there were so many different kinds of reactions. But it was a very intense moment. But it didn't. There was nothing inauspicious about it. It was completely auspicious. Sometimes they describe the sentiments of the gopis as being simultaneous nectar and poison. It was kind of like that. It was ecstatic because you knew that Prabhupada had perfectly executed the mission of human life and was back to Godhead. And but for us, it was loss, irretrievable and irreplaceable loss. So it was a very difficult period.
A funny thing happened was when Prabhupada departed, there was like a cyclone that swept through India. I'd actually been there until the Sunday night before, but then I had to get back because at the same time I was doing the Makrana supervision for the marble work. And I had to get back. I had delayed it about 2 weeks because we were all feeling Prabhupada was close to departing. But then I just thought, no, I have to go and do my service. And I got in that Sunday night, and then around 3 in the morning, Siddhartha woke me up. We were sharing the same brahmachari room. He said, Prabhupada said, Prabhupada. Immediately got up and offered my obeisances. And I looked, and it was 3 in the morning. And then Siddhartha said, oh, must be dream, must be dream. And then we tried to take rest again, and the next thing, this cyclone just swept through India. And this huge neem tree just keeled over. Wham! Just woke up the whole neighborhood there. And then the next morning we heard Prabhupada had departed. And our immediate amongst brahmacharis were thinking, wow, Prabhupada came and took his neem tree. But I remember in the newspaper, in the Bombay Times or whatever, that spoke of that very weird kind of snapstorm that had swept throughout India. And that in Madras they had a tidal wave. And on top of the tidal wave there were flames. And there was a photo of that right in the front page of the newspaper. And we were thinking, wow, how inauspicious the departure of a pure devotee, the symptoms are there.